Welcome to Thrive in Design, a podcast about making money and beautiful interiors as it relates to product-based businesses in the interior design industry. Each week, we'll discuss innovative strategies on how to approach product development and design sales in a shifting market. I'm your host, Nicole Lachey Ben. Welcome back to another episode of the Thrive in Design podcast. Today, I am thrilled to have a remarkable guest who brings over 20 years of unparalleled expertise in the architectural and interior design industry, Lauren Henley McKinnon. Lauren has an impressive portfolio, having worked with industry giants like Williams Sonoma, Phillip Jeffries, Formica, and a prominent commercial Steelcase dealership. Her extensive experience spans countless luxury brands through showroom representation. As an expert in top sales performance, client services, and project management, Lauren is here to share her invaluable insights on how to elevate and grow your brand. Thrive in Design Services aligns seamlessly with the incredible work Lauren is doing, and I'm so excited to collaborate with her. Since Lauren and I met at HD Vegas earlier this year, we are continuing the conversation that we started off mic and now on mic on this episode together. Today, we'll be diving into the importance of trade shows and how to make data-driven decisions at every touchpoint. Stay tuned as we explore Lauren's journey and uncover the secrets to have success in the world of luxury and commercial design. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you, Nicole. It's a true pleasure to be here. I'm really thrilled to share some of these insights and experiences, as well as my journey in the interior design industry. And I did want to, extend a heartfelt thanks to NEWH for bringing us together and really the power of industry networking.
Yes, absolutely. Between social media and NEWH, it was like the heavens aligned for us to meet, I believe. Yeah. So Lauren, tell me a little bit about your journey in the interior design industry. Where did it all start and how has it transitioned into the consulting work that you're doing now?
Yeah. So I started outside of the industry. I started in art history when I went to school, and I very quickly realized the potential and the power of interior design in the whole industry versus just being a curator at a museum. So within 3 months of graduating, I was back in school for interior design. But before all of that, I'd always been in sales before college and, all the way through interior design school. And the showrooms I worked in really focused on to the trade accounts. And so that actually was part of how it kind of hooked me, was realizing how much impact you can have on big projects or residential projects. And so then I started as an interior designer, but after there was an economic downturn, I shifted back over to the sales side. And then I stayed as an architectural rep and I didn't look back.
Yeah. So tell me more about what you loved about the interior design industry. Like art history, of course, there's history in art and history in design. Yeah. And then, of course, art goes into the built environment. Yeah. But what was that special thing that hooked you into the interior design side of the career? And then two, the sales side is a little bit different, right? It's business. Yeah. It's numbers driven. It's data driven. Yeah. What made you stay on that side of the business?
So I'll start with the second question and just say that I've always been driven by sales, and that even started as a kid doing Girl Scout cookies, was very driven. I, at one point as a kid, made my own newspaper and started charging people for advertising their products in it. So it was pre-Craigslist, and I did that.
Are you serious?
So it's always been there. And I actually, I kind of forgot about this, but behind the scenes, I feel like it was always around me to talk about sales. So my mother was a fashion buyer for department stores. And then my dad was in sales for semiconductors. So anyways, combining art and beauty and numbers has just kind of always been around me. And then, the thing that I feel very strongly connects art history with interior design is before interior designer was a full-time true profession. If you were in different kind of class sets, you would do things that are, called the grand tour. You would go tour Europe and you go tour other places to get culture and understand things. But a lot of times the people who were doing that were also thinking about how they're going to build expansive projects. And obviously those were very high-end residential, kind of palaces and so forth. So to me, the transition from art history over to interior design was very natural because to thrive, I think in interior design, you do really need to know the context of what's around you. And so I think, the best designers, whether you're a designer or an architect or you're a sales rep, know that it's always context. And then when you add the sales side of that and the numbers, then I think it's that human connection because you can't just look at data only. You have to think about the connection. And for me, that's very driven by the service that I provide. And so, when I was a rep, I'd always think about what people had as their needs. And I would always ask, what is your need before I would just lay in to telling them about the product? Because the biggest thing is you want to have a value proposition. You want to solve a problem. And you can't do that if you don't ask what they really need. And then our industry, I think, is the most amazing industry because it's, very technical with the people that are putting projects together. You also have to be very technical to get your product into those projects. And if you can't, hold your weight in that, that'll kind of show very quickly. And there is relationships that are like so long term. I mean, in our industry, it's in a lot of other sales industries, I think they're very transactional. But in our industry, you think in terms of, I'm going to have this relationship with someone for like 20 plus years. And
Exactly.
your name really means something beyond just the product that you're selling. So that's the passion that keeps driving me in the industry is how there's still amazing creativity and amazing beauty, but then there's a technical side and then there's a human side. And it's just, it makes it not ever feel like, I always feel like my cup is full when I get to interact on a really great interaction with someone.
Yeah, I can totally agree to that. I too was a rep, as you know.
Yeah.
So we have that in common. We have
Yeah.
the fact that we're doing like strategy, consulting, and everything in the industry. And I know for me as a rep, my brain works as a design thinker, right? I'm
Yeah.
always like, okay, who is my audience? What is their problem? And how can I solve for that problem to make the experience better? Whether that was the sale experience or how they're specifying the product or even the touch points that they had with the brand. I was always thinking outside of, okay, I'm just a sales rep. And I'm sure you can totally relate to that. So what were some of the things for you that you were always solving for and how has that shaped the work that you're doing at your company now?
I think some of the things that are always being like kind of, solved for is, and I think this is really great in the kind of current like context of, trade shows, but then also talking to people and regionally. I think the biggest thing I always solved for was how to actually make a personal connection because you can't just door knock and you can't just cold call and you can't just email. And it's like 80% of calls go to voicemail and then 90% of voicemails just don't get listened to. So if you can find a way to get through all of these things that are stacked against you and really, stay engaged with people. And then the biggest thing to me on staying engaged with people is meeting them where they're at. And one of the biggest things I kind of always talk about is that you have to understand the pressures that are being put on the specifiers. So the architects, designers, and then contractors or developer groups, or even just ownership groups. And I think the easiest example is, architects and designers, they have billable hours that they're absolutely beholden to. And you want to have them specify your product. And you can't just door knock and you can't just maybe get into presentations anymore. And even if you do, if those are available, you do have to think very keenly about making their time worth spending it with you. And, the biggest way that can be done is actually in industry, to me, industry organizations, or just having like lunch with people. At least in my Pacific Northwest, it's got a different maybe ways that people like to interact. It's not really like a happy hour crowd per se. Sometimes there's happy hours, but mostly, I found really great when I was a rep, really great connections. And I do kind of like to plan out with manufacturers, what is that social connection they're doing to actually earn the business? Because if you can take a decision maker to lunch, they have the time. Usually they're not at a billable hour then. And you can actually talk about projects and you can get to know them more deeply and you can actually get to know what their pain points are. And they'll think of you really honestly if you are already meeting them where they need to be. And then when they go away back to their office, now they have a personal connection with you. So those kind of, in our industry, a lot of times in just sales in general, it's always talked about hunting, 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 hunting. And for me, it's got to be a lot softer. It cannot just be hunt sales and then churn and burn. That makes no sense whatsoever. So for me and with my clients, I really put forth our approach, which is hunting and gathering and cultivating, because you do need to hunt those sales and leads, but you also want to gather people together and think of how that's going to be connected. And then long term, what are you doing to cultivate those projects and what are you doing to cultivate those relationships? So that can be, gratitude outreach programs or, consulting directly, or basically just the fact that you are a really good active listener and you don't just spew spec information.
I get it. And I've been at companies that are just like, okay, here's our product, and then just go into that versus the type of way that you're saying in terms of like cultivating that relationship, listening to what they need, and then creating the conversation around that. So before we get into the trade show topic that we came to talk to today, give everybody just a quick rundown of what you're up to at Henley McKinnon right now.
Yeah. So our consulting firm really brings data-driven insights and our years of experience to manufacturers so that they can really turn their product specifications into installations. We know that beautiful product is only going to shine so far on its own, but you need to have kind of some other additional thoughts behind it. We provide a holistic approach behind sales strategy, branding, marketing, and analytics, as well as sales leadership to fully, develop that out for manufacturers. So I'd like to say that a lot of times, if something's working, we're totally not going to get rid of what's working. We're only going to focus on what needs to be fixed. And that kind of holistic approach that we offer all these different services will allow us to kind of pinpoint, because we want to very much hear what the needs are and then hear what the future goal is. And then how can we bring those together? There is some very easy, tried and true industry standards that sometimes people and manufacturers aren't aware of, but other times they are advanced and established brands and they maybe have lost some luster and they need kind of just a perspective on what can actually bring that back. And so that's where it's, not just about getting newbies out into the marketplace, but it's also evaluating maybe what are some pain points or what are some missing items, because our industry is so technical. And if some of those key points are being missed and you're just relying on, pushing the product spec sheet on social media and marketing, it's totally not going to do it. I mean, the big thing I love thinking about is, and this is like very like old school, like super old school marketing, but when you're marketing and you're publicizing products, it's not really about just the benefits of the products. It's about people seeing transformation and they want to envision how your product's going to transform them in some way. And sometimes it's transforming, I have this pain point and this lighting company is going to actually solve that for me. Or other times it's more emotional and it's about the vision and you realize that you can see yourself in that transformation. So having the holistic approach, we'd like to kind of balance out the numbers with the industry experience, but then also, it's tailored for each customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on a really good point in terms of this, like not selling the features and the benefits, right? I've seen companies do that. Like, hey, we have this product. It does X, it does Y, it does Z. Those are all great. And those are all great selling points. But like, again, what you said, what is the transformation that you're providing to the customer or to the space that they are designing? And how does that really make them feel? And then on top of that, like, what is the brand story that is cohesive from touch point to touch point with your brand and with that product? Yeah. And speaking of touch points, both of us were at HD Vegas this year. And I thought there was like a trade show season, but trade shows go all year long.
They sure do.
There are trade shows in January, in February, in November. Like it's from start to end. There might be a little bit of break in the summertime because people.
I think August is the only one I've ever found that has a lull between North America and Europe and some shows that are in Asia. Like August is the only one that has a lull. Yeah.
But there's trade shows all year long. So whenever you guys are listening to this episode, what we're about to talk about is relevant. Yeah. And now that we're in this like post-COVID era, trade shows are really full and back in full swing. So
Yeah.
let's talk about some essentials for trade shows for these interior product brands. And we're going to talk about the preparation, the data insights that they need to think about for all of their decisions. First, let's start with preparation. What are some essential steps that brands should take in preparing for the trade show, including displays, marketing, collateral, promotional giveaways, and all the things?
Yeah. So, like you said, trade shows are all year round. So it does include several key steps. And the first one that I think about is like finding out which show you actually want to attend to. And so I always think about, my target audience. How is the show going to provide resources and, ensure that I can do accurate follow-up? Some trade shows actually will provide you lists, or some will allow you to scan attendees, things like that. I also like to think about, whether or not a manufacturer is going to be a small fish in a giant sea when they go out to a certain trade show. Now, sometimes that can totally work for you because it's a national platform and this is your have arrived moment. Other times you can get different benefits out of more regional trade shows. And so to put that in perspective, and you already kind of like led into this, I wanted to have some additional numbers behind the largest trade shows in the United States that are in our industry. So, NeoCon has 50,000 attendees. The AIA Expo is 15,000. HD is like 1,200. ICFF is 10,000. And then
HD is only 12.
Sorry, 12,000. Yeah.
Oh, I was about to say, wow.
Sorry, 12,000. And then ICFF is 10,000. And BDNY says it's like 5,500 people attend that. And so when you think about how in the United States, there's 190,000 architects and interior designers that practice, if you're going to NeoCon, you're capturing like 25% of the general population. But then if you look at some more market specific shows like HD or BDNY, even though that number sounds small, think in the context. This is where I'm getting decision makers, or this is where, quote unquote, my people from how my product sells the best are going to be. And you can then weigh that all in against, the kind of cost and other things. But as far as like prepping for the booth, now that you've decided, okay, this is the show that I want to go to, I think it's down to kind of a few major components. You obviously want to put forth your best new product. That's what people are anticipating. Of course, you may have to infill it with some established or best sellers, but really you want to be mindful of that. And then there's, the aesthetic, and the signage. And then I'll get into later, the promotional things. But in terms of aesthetic and signage, you need to make sure that you're visually appealing and you really convey your message effectively, especially from really far away. So with signage, for example, for every inch, you can see a letter 10 feet away. So if you need to be seen from 100 foot away, you need to have 10-inch letters in your booth or on your showroom. Also, you want to kind of think about colors and how that kind of goes into, promoting your brand. And sometimes that can be thinking about where you're placed on, say, if you have a showroom or versus a trade show booth, you may know who your competitors are. Your booth may be totally baked, but you may be able to bring in some kind of accent colors that the sales team wears or just kind of inserted around the booth. And that can be great ways to grab people's attention.
One quick thing, Lauren, because a lot of the times I get listeners that are new to the game. They are like e-commerce brands and they're like, oh my gosh, we want to get into hospitality, or, oh, we want to focus on the commercial design segment. So even just the small portion that you just said, national versus regional trade shows, right? Let's break that down for a second. Of course, all of the shows that Lauren mentioned just now in terms of BDNY, NeoCon, HD Vegas, all of those are national shows and are getting thousands and thousands of people flying from all over the country and all over the world to be seen, right? And then brands are able to, exhibit at those shows, get larger booths, and there is a higher investment, of course, because those trade shows have a very large reach and then large audience that are attending, versus regional trade shows are typically region specific, right? So I'm here in the Baltimore market. So some of the main regional trade shows that we have, of course, NEWH has a regional trade show in Bethesda every couple of years. and that's focused on the hospitality design market. But there's some huge major players in the DC, Baltimore market, like Marriott, Hilton, Choice Hotels. That's one regional trade show. So if you're looking to focus on hospitality and you're like, hey, I want to get in front of those brands, even though it's a smaller regional trade show, those decision makers will be there. Yeah. In Baltimore, we also have the Be More Design Expo. So it's all Baltimore specific interior design and architecture firms that are attending, but they are working on some important projects. So I think brands, especially that are like just getting into the industry, they're like, okay, where do I even start? You have to think about, okay, what makes sense like for our dollar? Like what's our budget to invest? And what's going to be the biggest ROI for who we're going to get in front of in terms of the decision makers that are going to be specifying our product. So I just wanted to throw that tidbit in there because I find a lot of people now that are just getting into the game and they wouldn't even know where to start when it comes to like navigating regional versus national trade shows. The other thing that you just mentioned is just like your booth design. So let's like touch on that real quick. I didn't even know until you just said that. What did you say, for every inch or for every?
For every inch, you can see a letter 10 feet away. So if you want to see a letter 100 feet away, it needs to be 10 inches tall.
Okay. So listen, down to the font size, that's how detailed we need to be. Thriving Design is more than just a podcast. We are a design and innovation consultancy that focuses on helping interior product companies increase their brand awareness and revenue. We do this by truly understanding a designer's experience with your brand. We need to know what they experience from the time they learn about your brand, through the specification process, through that product being shipped out to the job site. Understanding pain points in that experience is crucial in increasing your brand awareness and revenue. So whether you need to revamp your branding, marketing, or sales strategy, or the complete customer journey, we are here to help your company thrive. Head to thriveanddesign.co/contact and let's get the conversation going about how we can help your interior product company. All right. So outside of font size, the booth design, those intentional, even just like outfits that people need to be wearing to be on brand, continue on with other like data-driven decisions that people need to make for their trade show.
Yeah. So I know we'll probably chat about more specifics about the booth design in a minute, but, in the things that people are getting ready for before the trade show, then you also want to think about your promotional giveaways and get those really ready. So, and I definitely don't love when I hear people knock the like tried and true. Like there is the need for like branded pens and notebooks and tote bags and stickers that people take away and stick on their own notebooks and things like that. Like people will absolutely want your collateral if you make it, because 87% of people that are given a promotional giveaway hold on to it for at least 12 months. And then 79% of people getting a promo will make them actually do business with that company. And then, when you're getting prepped closer to, you want to also not forget about prepping your sales team. So that might be yourself or kind of rolling things out to other people. But Princeton University has also done a research study that says you only have 30 seconds to be remembered. And so you need to be like laser focused when you're getting into introducing yourself to people. You also need to make sure that you cover the basics. Who are you? What do you do?
Exactly.
What are you asking about? And I like to kind of extend those 30 seconds and get people held on to me by, as soon as I say those first three things, I actually say, what do you need? And then move them through my product offerings or move them through the booth or move them through the showroom, only with that knowledge of what their needs are. It automatically is going to start a greater connection, and you're going to actually be able to tailor maybe your already pre-created pitch or your pre-created demo that you already had in mind just for them. And then you're extending that 30 seconds, because anything you can do to extend that 30 seconds is impactful because of how many times it takes to get people to meet with you. The number of touch points is 8 touch points to close a sale. And I mentioned 2% of cold calls get a meeting. So if you have people right in front of you at a regional or a national trade show, you have the most engaged person possible. And if they are continually sitting with you to like walk through and understand your products, you really need to make it worth their time because you have your ROI, but they also have their ROI. They spend a lot of money and time to leave their office, be away from billable hours, and come out here and then meet with you. So, really like hug that conversation as much as you can, but of course, end it about their need. Don't get off topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, especially at HD, a few brands that stood out to me were the ones that were like walking the show in like branded colors or really fun outfits to bring attention back to their booth. Or the ones where I'm like walking into their booth and they just made sure that one, they had their glasses on and so they could see my name on the name tag. Yeah. So they started by like greeting me by my name. You know what I mean? Even just small touches like that 30 seconds makes it count. It's like, who's this guy in the pink suit? Like, I need to follow him back. And then when they say, like, Nicole, welcome. And then they go into, those personalized questions and personalized pitch. It's all so special. So what are some innovative or lesser known strategies that brands can use to stand out and maximize their impact at trade shows? We talked about some colors. We talked about the font size and all of those things. But is there anything else that you would say is a lesser known strategy that brands can start thinking about?
So I think some of the most innovative strategies that people can use is, of course, like the color and jumping out and, kind of, especially your people kind of coming away from the product and the setting around you. I think that's some of the most innovative ways that you can enhance connections with people. I mean, the other thing is when you actually have the idea of what your demo is going to be. That seems really basic, but a lot of people don't, put that all together and actually think about what the story is. So, to me, when you actually put your booths together, maybe it's based on what's available or what is the best sellers. But even if you can, into the booth, make sure that there's a story and there's a story that connects about that transformation that people are desiring. That's going to be really effective. And when it talks about kind of how you can interact with people, there are, amazing displays that can actually be used. And of course, everything's within a little bit of like, what's your budget and what's your trade show? But, if you are thinking about like out of the box ideas and, really want to draw people in, making sure that you have like kind of moving visuals. So, if you can have a digital screen, even if you can have a laptop, if it's a small regional trade show, that actually acts as a selling tactic when you're talking to someone else. And so the more that you can actually like think about engaging people, people are very visual. They actually see before, they hear anything. And so, that's really going to be really important there. I think it's interesting, to know that certain products you can do, augmented reality and some other things, but those are kind of out of reach for a lot of people. So if you actually want to just fully curate your space and your story, even down to if it is a showroom-based trade show, if you have a scent in the area and you have music in the area. Also,
invigorate the senses.
Yeah. Really make people feel and stand out. And I think in those kind of showroom-based ones, that really works because also everyone's putting on 20,000 steps in a day, which is 8.5 miles. And if they walk into a cool, calm, quiet, despite how many people are there, beautifully scented space with amazing music playing that is not the hustle and bustle of, what they just kind of came from, that's very dramatic. And so, then also when you think about, as you're putting things there, make sure that it's really, you don't have to be a furniture manufacturer to do this. In fact, I think some of the best manufacturers that are not furniture manufacturers make sure that they put like seating and networking opportunities right within their space. So you could be a flooring manufacturer. And if you can make sure that you're bringing something that people can sit down and network around and have conversations, that's huge. Also, these ones, I think of them as old school, but they're just what works. So it doesn't have to be very, in the future, but it's making sure that you have a reason for people to come to your booth multiple times throughout the day. And I love the whole having the coffee bar in the morning or then having the cocktail bar in the afternoon. And then the cocktail bar, when that arrives, the music in the booth switches and it's loud and it's energizing and people are turning their head. And they're like, where is that? I need to get over there. Sorry, I got to ditch wherever I'm at right now. And
no, I agree.
And then just like, one of the best ones I saw was everyone was doing the coffee bar one morning at a trade show, but someone else had the frozen latte culotta like machine. And then the cups, had their logos on it. And you just saw these walking around with whipped cream on them, and they were tiny, but people were going over there.
For it. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think thinking about things that can really like bring people to you, let them stay with you, and then make them like come back later. So if they come by in the morning, hey, come back later, we have happy hour. Hey, come back again, something different is going to happen. That's like, I think the most, effective ones that I've ever seen. That goes beyond any kind of like digital or like technology driven things. That's just kind of about, again, people. And then if you, want and have the ability in your budgets, I also think that making sure that you actually network with key decision makers outside of the trade show is really impactful. So every city and every region is so unique, and some people only get to travel to that location for just this trade show. A lot of times, especially if they have families, it's like this is the time for them to be out and actually maybe go out to a happy hour or a dinner.
Right.
They
have
just
some
don't
fun.
get to. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think you mentioned like the coffee idea with the logo on the cup. I think that also goes for like a really cool giveaway. Like some people are like, hey, I don't want another tote bag. But when I was at NeoCon, Momentum had this like most beautiful tote bag. Okay. And they only had a limited amount. They gave out a few hundred in the morning on the first day, a few hundred second day, a few hundred the next day. Anytime someone saw that bag in the hallway, they're like, oh my gosh, is Momentum like giving out the bag again? To the point where people started offering money to people for their bags. But it just like created so much buzz because everybody had this like cool one of a kind bag through this artist collaboration. So yeah, I think like if there's a way for you to give somebody something branded to take around, just an attendee, that's freely, bringing people back to your space too. So I love that.
Yeah. So, and I was going to say, actually, like not even knowing which brand you were going to mention, I was like, some of those bags people want and like run for that first thing in the morning at certain places like year after year because they know that it's limited. And so I think that's also the component of like, what can you do that is exclusive? And again, it's high quality thought sometimes, not just the cost. It's the high quality thought. And, not everything's quantitative. Not everything is just, I get more for more. Sometimes it is that kind of like elevated exclusive experience. And, I know marketing folks would probably be, well, like there's a budget, of course.
Right. But you should have seen the designers coming in to look for their reps when they didn't have a bag. Like, make sure you.
I don't have one.
Me. You know what I mean?
So or do you have some for me at home? And like when we get back to the city,
so like, they already have appointments lined up in order to just like start the conversation around this bag. And then that leads into our last like biggest point in terms of like follow up after the trade show, right? Because it's not just the prep. The prep is important. The trade show itself is important in everything that the brand is doing to activate there. But the work is not done after that. So give us a couple of key pointers for trade show follow up, and actually throw in one thing that you think has not worked, that you saw a brand do and you're like, oh my God, don't do that.
I mean, I will say it's not just one brand, and I know this is going to cause like flack, but like you can't just do the canned marketing only after the event. You cannot stop there. You have to think about what's personalized, and also you cannot be, in my mind, unless you're like a really itty bitty guy. But even if you plan for it, you shouldn't be late with your follow ups. In terms of those canned follow-ups, those should be already thought through, already templated, already ready to go. I think I got one after a trade show once, and it was like, I mean, it wasn't the next week after the trade show, which in my mind, anything arriving that week is totally fine. But it arrived like the week after, and it wasn't
like 2 weeks after. Basically like 2 weeks after?
Yeah, basically 2 weeks after. And it was the canned one. And so this is the thing. I feel that if you have the personal response, maybe 2 weeks later, because the first week right after, gosh knows what you're doing as a regional rep or the actual activated sales team. I think that the personal notes is a 2 week it's kind of relevant. Really, if you can get all of your meeting follow-ups done, at the end of the day or, the next day or right after when you land back in your hometown, that's what the personal outreach I think is best at. And that's actually want to like transition away from what you shouldn't do. But what I think you should do is always make sure that you actually are showing appreciation, showing that you were paying attention, and having, whether it's digital note-taking devices with you, or you just write down in a piece of paper, or a notebook after you've talked with someone, those kind of ways to grab what's relevant so that when you do follow up and it's personalized, the personalized connections and the personalized follow-ups are the ones that are going to be the best, because those are the ones that are going to drive the support, keep the momentum of the project you were possibly talking about moving forward, and, be able to get those follow-up appointments. I think the personalization is so important, especially if you make sure you have a call to action. Too many times people do the, hey, here's your information, and then they just stop and there's no further call to action. And that's really kind of halfway there on the serving your customers mentality. It is so important to serve your customers. But if you don't, after you serve them, make a new call to action to keep the ball in play, I think that's also where it can totally just die.
Right.
You worked so hard to have a nice relationship and a nice conversation with them at the show, especially if you said you were going to deliver something. You have to deliver it, and then you have to keep it moving forward. And that's how you build the relationships going. But, canned has a place, but canned only is kind of a kiss of death to me, even though it's a necessary evil. It really needs to be, the personal connections.
Absolutely. I completely agree. All right. So, Lauren, we have touched on so many things. We gave them a little bit about your background in the interior design industry, from art history to interior design to sales, and now consulting for brands. We also talked about trade show prep, the actual trade show booth, and what they can do to really activate the space and build relationships there. And then we ended off with a little bit, just a little sprinkle of trade show follow-up. So, Lauren, before we close, is there anything else that you'd like the listeners to know about how they can be successful at a trade show?
Yeah, I think success in our industry, as well as at trade shows, is always a little bit of a blend about creativity with strategy. So, don't get too hard on worrying about the statistics or worrying about the data. It does take a huge amount of planning for yourself or a whole team at your company to put this together. And, when you do kind of release some of that restrictions and you want to be more creative, I think that's actually where the best, booths and the best engagement actually happens, is that it's fully kind of thought out. And then, you can get to all the other things because you have a long checklist, whether or not you have a good booth. But if you can be a great booth, it's when people like free themselves up. And that's what our industry is about. Architects and designers do not just want to see your chairs or your flooring or your lighting displayed just like a catalog. They want to think about that transformation, and it's up to you to deliver it. So, if you're stymied about where to go with that creativity, reach out and get people to help you. But, you can also dig back into your own backstory to bring creativity to your booths and to your engagement.
Yeah. And just with that last bit, I now have about 3 more topics that we can come back and talk about. So, Lauren, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah.
Let everybody know where they can connect with you online.
So you can reach us at henleymckinnon.com, which is HenleyMcKinnon. You can find me on LinkedIn, Lauren Henley McKinnon, or you can email me at lauren@henleymckinnon.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Lauren. This has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. It was a blast. I can't wait to talk to you about more topics in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us this week on Thrive in Design. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Thrive in Design. And for more strategies on how your product company can innovate in the interior design industry, head to training.thriveindesign.co. As always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to create captivating content. See you next week.